What is up, people? And we are back for the first time ever to, I don't know, it's gonna be like a blog, just basically what I'm doing currently with my time, and you can watch or you cannot watch, I don't care. But today we are talking about the calculations I've been doing for computing and why I started that, because I think it's a fair point what Kuba was asking. I don't think I answered it completely, so I just wanted to address that because I think it's really cool. So, firstly, the math. So why I started this was I looked up how much storage does the human brain have, and it said something like I got the numbers here, I got them written down. 2.5 petabytes, which I think is like 2,500,000 gigabytes of storage in your brain. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a crazy number, but that's a number that humanity has already reached storage-wise. And then there's numbers of like how fast can your brain process information. This is where it gets like crazy. Because according to actually this research just came out like 2 months ago. I'll link it in the description, but I found it interesting. I don't know if anyone else wants to read it. It's kind of long, but either way, they were the what's it called? The summary, the basic number that they gave at the end was that the brain can process information at about 1 times 10 to like the 13th to 17th range and of flops. And basically what that means is they're saying that your brain can do so like 1 times 10 to the 18th flops is an exaflop, and that's basically every second your brain can do 1 times 10 to the 18th calculations in that second. So it's a little lower than an exaflop, but basically that number is like a little less, like 100 quadrillion is like kind of the number, the high range, and then lower is like maybe 1 quadrillion of calculations per second that your brain is doing. And there's not really a lot of computers out there that can do that currently. I think another recent thing that came out is Fugaku, which is it's a place in Japan, of course. They just built the fastest supercomputer ever, and it barely actually. So 2 numbers. First, it can reach 1.4 exaflops, like okay. And then the highest performance it's ever gotten is like 2 exaflops, so that's 2 times 10 to the 18th. So you can reach those numbers, but that computer costs like $1 billion to make, so it's like there's no way you're reaching that. Japan's reaching that, you're not doing it. But either way, keep those 2 numbers in mind. So I kept those 2 numbers in mind, and I wanted to figure out, like, if you were gonna go into a VR world, right? Like, how much space would that take? And I mean like a good one, not like the ones we currently have. Like, I don't know if you guys seen Alex, which is like a Half-Life spin-off game where like the graphics are kind of the same as Half-Life 2. And those graphics are pretty good. You can do a lot of things. You can pick up stuff a lot more easily and interact with the environment. But it's still got all that gloss. And like the particles aren't really that good, and like everything looks cartoony still, you know what I'm saying? So I was thinking, okay, how can you make the most realistic game, and how much storage would that take? So 2 things I started thinking about was, first off, there's the render distance. And there's the amount of information you pick up and drop off every time you turn your head, right? And then there's the total storage of the whole game. So the first thing I started off with, which I think it's not that hard to compute, is like the render distance, just the imagery, how much space that's gonna take. And that's what I've been doing I mean, I told you guys I've been like reading about eyeballs and all that and what they do. And so, based on the human eye, because you want it as realistic as possible, so you want, when you enter a game, you want the same field of vision that you would have as if you were just walking around, right? Otherwise, it would be like super weird. Although, of course, if you have like things that make your vision a lot better, like some sort of power up or something, like that's completely cool, but you still gotta follow the same physics that your eyeballs are following. Basically, your eye has like a central circle. It's not a cone. It's like a circle where everything in there is basically the same amount of clarity, and then everything out of that circle gets more blurry. I mean, like, it's kind of obvious, like, when you think about it, but you have to actually think about it, because like I completely forgot that in my calculation. So when I first did it, I just did like, okay, if something is an inch in front of your face, it's a certain amount of blurry. And then 20 feet away, that's like, for a healthy human, that's like when things start to get blurry and you lose a ton of clarity. And further you get more blurry. So I didn't really take the third, variable into account. But either way, what I want to do is like create a 3 meter by 3 meter area, right? And have everything in there rendered as hyper realistic as possible. 3 meters by 3 meters isn't that like crazy of a number. It's not that tall, it's not that long, whatever I'm trying to say. So it won't take up too much storage, but everything out of that 3 meter area still needs to look like it's a part of the world. So when you're going for realism in this sense, you want everything to render out with the same blurriness ratio that your eye has. Do you know what I'm like trying to say? So like, something is 20 feet away, you're not interacting with it per se, but you want it to have the same blurriness that something would have if it's 20 feet away in the real world. Like, just look at something across the wall from you, right? It gets blurrier, and then like keep following closer and closer. You see things clear. And so I like, one thing I hate about games is like in Minecraft, they have that fog. They don't really have blurriness. Everything's just kind of like, you see it, and then the further away it gets, it just like starts getting covered with particles and starts getting foggy. And that's kind of what Richard was talking about with like things that like help save space. But one of the problems with I see of like making things 2D, I think that's what Richard was talking about, is like, if you're here and then there's someone and there's a pole in between you and a person behind you, you both see different sides of the pole, so it's gonna have to render the whole pole no matter what, because your field of vision is kind of like 180. It's a little less, it's like maybe 175 or something degrees, but it's basically 180. So you're seeing most of one side of the pole and they're seeing most of the other side of the pole, so you're basically rendering the whole pole. So I wanna like it's kind of like a stress test. I want it to get to the highest number that's reasonable I can think of, and then see where I can shave things off from there. But I mean, yeah, what else did I want to say? Oh yeah, another thing I've been struggling with is, how do I make air? Like, when people make video games and stuff, they don't really consider air that much, like how much air has an effect. They usually just leave it blank. But in like a hyper realistic scenario, I see two benefits of air, like actual particle air. And of course the drawback to all that is it takes tons of storage space and processing power to make actual particle air. But the thing I see with air is the first off, refraction of light. So like, you kind of see on my face right now is like the flare coming out of it and all that, and that's all affected by obviously like rain and stuff like that. And air has like a very small refraction rate, but it's still a rate nonetheless. And so with actual particle air, you can have things like weather wind, fucking effects on like projectiles and things like that, things that push you back and slow you down. And with a particle effect, it kind of is more real. Like usually for weather changes in games, they usually just have it like on a clock. They have it just, or like a randomness generator, you know, like just maybe wind happens, maybe rain happens. It doesn't really, people don't put that much effort into weather currently. But if you want like a realistic scenario with air particles, and you give them the properties of real air particles, or the closest you can get, you kind of have a system where weather generates automatically like it does in the real world. So it's like when the air gets hotter, like say you're putting like fire spells or whatever, you know what I'm talking about? It makes the air heat up, right? It expands and it changes the atmosphere. So you have things like clouds forming on their own just based off of the properties of air. And you have wind, and you have the changes in wind, and you have clouds moving across the sky, and you have rain whenever there's enough rain whenever there's enough droplets in those clouds, right? And that's like kind of like that's like the pinnacle of that's the, what am I trying to say? That's like the peak of environment in gaming, is like things affect it's like the randomness that's not random, you know what I mean? It's like you're actually creating an entire world. Like imagine if someone wanted to create Earth, right? Like, would they go out of their way to create rainbows, or would rainbows just be a product of light refraction that they created, you know what I mean? So like, it seems random, but it's not, because it has all those physics behind it acting in an invisible way that you don't really see it. And so like, things will be generated at random. Obviously they seem random to the person who's not creating the code and whatnot, and that takes a ton of processing power. Bringing it back to what I was saying earlier, that like not a lot of computers could handle that much. So I understand the reasoning behind people just making air not a real thing. It's just an empty void. This saves a lot of space, obviously. Space. But I think that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, that's it. I don't know. That's where I'm at so far. Oh wait, no, yeah. Okay. So right now I'm trying to figure out field of view for. I'm cutting, like, since it's a 3x3 area that I'm trying to make, I'm cutting it into like 90 degree. I'm just making a box and how much storage space that box would take to render if you see all the way out, right? And then the next box, how much. So I'm kind of splitting it like dice into 6 parts, and then figuring out all the math to that. And then I want to figure out how much you're picking up and dropping every time you turn your head around. Obviously that depends on like what is rendered into the scenery, but I think I could get like a fairly good equation, or a fairly good estimate as to what's gonna be in the field of view, or like the highest number achievable that I can get into that field of view without like dying from processing speed. And lastly, I wanna conclude with what I started with, which is the brain has 2.5 petabytes of storage space, which seems like a ton. You know, 2.5 million gigabytes. It sounds like a lot, but you can actually fit that into computers. Not that hard. It'd be expensive, obviously, but the size of your brain obviously is really good. But like, to fit it into a computer, you can just keep on adding storage until it fits. So it's not that hard to do. So I think it's interesting that your brain can take in tons of calculations and tons of information with for the package, like not really that much storage space. So there's a lot of deletion going on constantly in your brain. I think that's one of the biggest parts of making a game is what do you need rendered in every part. Obviously, I'm not a game developer, but this is what I think. This is how I feel, right? There's what do you need rendered, and how much can you get rid of without losing like the realism in this game, you know? So, I mean, yeah, just food for thought. That's what I've been doing. Keep on rocking in the free world. I don't know. Adios.